conversation. This is what you needed. Let's go.
Hello, fam. This is Damon Rich,
And I'm Tamika Rich.
and welcome to Vow Sex and Housekeeping. Apparently, I got a chair in the way, and I'm actually putting it more in the way. So give me just a minute. Sorry about
To get it out the way.
To get it out the way. In the way. I'm actually putting it more in the way. So give me just a minute.
To get it out the way.
Sorry. Thought that was a little more out the way than it was.
You ready now?
Yeah, I'm ready. Hello, good evening, and welcome to Vow Sex and Housekeeping. I know Tuesday night, normally we come to you with Beyond Church Talk. But tonight we are going to go vow, sex, and housekeeping. We're going to talk about some marriage, some relationship.
Yeah, let's change it up a little bit.
Yeah, change it up. And tonight we're going to get naked. We're going to get naked. We're going to talk about naked conversation, more than just sex. So definitely as we're talking, if you have some questions, some comments, some thoughts that you want to throw out there, you want to ask of us, can you grab that mouse for me, babe, real quick?
Sure.
I'm so disorganized tonight. Yeah. Hey, busy. So if you do have some questions or comments or anything that you want to jump out there with on us tonight, feel free to drop those in the comments, and we will try our best to answer or address them. We hadn't done an episode or anything concerning marriage live, I don't think, this year at all.
Mm-mm.
And it's been a while.
It has. We had been talking about doing it and wanting to do it, but we just didn't, I don't know, find the time to do it.
Yeah, it just didn't line up.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. So that's one of the things we definitely want to jump in tonight and talk about some stuff, and I don't know where we're even gonna go with tonight's conversation. Where we start, I do know why I named it Naked Conversation,
Mm-hmm.
because I believe enough transparent conversation about marriage and relationships doesn't happen.
Right.
We might get into some dirty words tonight, like, roles,
okay.
submission. I don't know. Honesty, trust. I don't know. Some of those dirty commitment. We might get into some of those dirty words tonight. As we just kind of talk about it. What's been in your mind concerning relationships lately?
Probably some of the same things, or just what we're gonna talk about. Naked stuff, expectations. Probably some of the same things, or just what in your mind. A lot of times, how we see things or how they are in our minds, we necessarily expect it to play out that way.
Right.
And it doesn't. A lot of the times, I'm not even gonna say always, but a lot of the times. So you have to kind of be in the moment,
Mm-hmm.
and then just see what happens or see what it brings. Not that you shouldn't prepare. And I think a lot of time it is not communicating or miscommunication about certain things or expectations. But even though sometimes you don't sit down and communicate every little detail of expectations or things that you think or want from your mate or your spouse. And so a lot of times perspective and all of those things play a role or a part. And so you have it up here a certain way, and that's not necessarily how it plays out. And it's okay.
Right.
But a lot of times it's like, oh, we get disappointed,
Mm-hmm.
or don't go back to the drawing board or regroup or be like, okay, let me include you in what I had going on up here or the way I saw it, and then see if you see it the same way or I see it the same way. And then if not, let's just make it something,
Right.
make it what we want it to be together.
Right.
First of all, I do want to say this though. I didn't know what background you were going to use tonight. That is not our little bedroom, just FYI.
What?
Our bed.
What about it?
That's not our bed. That's not our room. So I was just letting the people know.
Why they need to know? Ain't none of their business what our bedroom look like.
Well,
Or
true,
don't look like.
but it doesn't look like that. But I thought that was cute.
Boy, I tell you, that is so unnecessary.
You think?
So unnecessary.
Not really. It was up here, so
Yeah. It should have probably stayed up there. I don't know. That's so unnecessary. Drop in the comments if you was concerned about that being our bedroom and why that would have bothered you in the first place.
Oh no, it wasn't bothering me. I was just, stating the facts.
You didn't want them to think we was living too high off the hall with that really nice bedroom.
No, that's not what I was thinking. It's all right. It looks like we're like on vacation though, doesn't it?
Almost, maybe.
Could be like in a hotel room on vacation.
Okay. All right. Back to your regularly scheduled program. This has been your episode of DIY, the bedroom edition.
Well, you said you didn't know what we were.
Well, apparently this was on your mind, so we gonna something on your mind, let it off, right?
Exactly. That's what naked conversation.
That's what naked conversation is. So I wanna jump into something. I had the opportunity talking to some good brothers that are husbands and different challenges. And I asked a good friend today a question, and maybe you can answer it from a wife's perspective for the wives. But the question I asked him, I said, what is the most, I don't know if I used the word disappointing, most difficult thing about being a husband? What's the most difficult thing about being a husband? And he talked about some of the things, and I'll preface it with this. Both of us agreed to this. There is no greater blessing bestowed on a man than to be a husband and a father.
Oh.
To be and like I've talked to other guys who feel similarly. Just it comes up in different ways, but once you fully understand what God expects of you, as harrowing as it may be, right? There is no greater honor than to be a husband and a father because of what it means to God, what he entrusts us with. But just because there's no greater honor than to be a husband and a father, it doesn't mean that it doesn't come with some angst and some concerns and whatever. And so my partner was saying, good friend was saying that, the amount of responsibility with it is so disappointing, or is the challenge. Like everything weighs on our shoulders from a society perspective, no matter what the house does, no matter what the wife is doing, the kids are doing. If the house is so there's an old saying about quarterbacks in football. They say when the team is winning, the quarterback gets all of the credit, and when the team is losing, the quarterback gets none of the blame. And as a husband, sometimes it feels like when the team is winning, the husband gets none of the credit, but when the team is losing, the husband gets all of the blame. And that sometimes is frustrating because you just want to be recognized for your commitment to lead and guide and support your family. Right. So understanding like that might be one of the most challenging things about being a husband, and no one really prepares you for that.
Oh, I'm glad you said that, because not just that particularly, but about being prepared and what that looks like for a husband. Because, people get married at different ages, different stages or whatever. But just some things I've been listening to this week or whatever, but what prepares you for that, or what young men or any man should be doing to prepare for marriage.
Right.
And what that looks like to step in that role, because it is a big responsibility that you have no clue or idea about. And if you don't have a father, because you should know, some men, but if you don't have like that father or father figure or people in your life to help nurture that and let you know what it's supposed to look like and what that responsibility comes with, then it kind of, falls by the wayside, or when mommy does a lot of the upbringing.
And see,
Sometimes, and
yeah,
we give our perspective on what it should look like, and then when that young man gets older and he feels like he's prepared, he's only prepared from her perspective.
I think that definitely a mother. We can get into this. Oh, we're gonna get into it because I've been some interesting conversations and some interesting revelations that I'm finding about myself. Is that as a mama can't prepare him to be a husband, right? There's a couple of lies I want to dispel about marriage. One of them that I used to espouse to, I used to say it: marriage is hard work. Marriage is not hard work, but I can tell you the things that make marriage seem like hard work, right? Marriage is not hard work. You can roll your eyes again.
Okay.
I can tell you the things that make marriage seem like hard work. The other lie is, and as you were just saying that, it came to mind. The other lie is that we don't have a guide for how to do marriage, which is a lie. It is, if we would stop only focusing on the spiritual aspect of the Bible, there are a lot of spiritual and practical applications. To me, if you can understand the Proverbs 31 marriage, it gives you the blueprint for doing marriage right. And I am on a mission this year to like resetting marriage to what I think God really wants marriage to be. And it's going to potentially piss some people off because because it's going to challenge our theological thinking concerning some things about marriage. It's going to challenge some of our theological thinking, and I might even hit on a couple of those. But
you probably will ruffle a few feathers because we're in a day and age where marriage is whatever you want it to be.
Whatever you want it to be.
Whatever
open
you
marriage,
make it,
yeah.
However you feel. It's the word marriage at the top, and then you come and put. So there's a creator of marriage, but you go, we're not doing it that way. Okay,
Including
but we're gonna keep the word marriage, and we're just gonna make it.
Including Christians don't want to do it God's way, right?
Absolutely.
And so here's the thing: there is contractual marriage and there's covenant marriage, right? One is cut by a pen, one is cut by blood and sacrifice, right? There's a and when God just started revealing stuff to me over the years about like sex and all of that, sex was God's marriage ceremony. That's how the covenant was cut. Sex was God's marriage ceremony. And it like even revealed some things to me. And I had to ask myself a question we've been married for 24 years. I had to ask myself a question once I really realized, even God showed me even more about how sex was the covenant, marriage is the marriage tool, is have you divorced everyone that you married yourself to?
Ooh.
Have you divorced yourself to everyone that you have married yourself to?
And that's really good, because I was listening to something earlier today, and people don't realize that soul tie or that stronghold, and you don't do the work after one relationship or one marriage or whatever to a person. You don't do the work to truly divorce it. I'll put it that way, since you put it that way.
You have to divorce it.
Completely separate, divorce, get delivered from it, if that's a good.
You can deliver it, divorce it, sever it, whatever you want to say. Sex was God's covenant. That is his covenant tool. And anytime you have sex with someone, you have married that individual. Sex was such a tool that there's a Levitical law that essentially says if you rape a woman, you had to marry her. It is such that tool. Now that's foreign to us this day, and I don't know even how I feel about that, but that's how much of a like you cut a covenant with that woman when you raped her, right? You forced her in that covenant, whole nother story, whole nother discussion, but you cut a covenant with her, right? And to the point of saying, hey, you got to divorce yourself, make sure that you divorce yourself from everyone that you've cut a covenant with. Now, let me just say something controversial. I ain't trying to be controversial, and this is a topic for a whole nother thing. while divorce is not a sin, remarriage under certain circumstances is. That's the word. And I welcome any theologians to let's have that discussion. Let us reason together. But remarriage is a sin if your spouse is still living. Bible says it plain and clear. But this is one of those times where we like to twist and manipulate the scripture. Oh, I wasn't whole when I met them, and now I'm whole, and now I'm ready to get married again. And I realized that God,
that's not funny because I completely understand.
And it's your thing, and I can get it and understand why you come there.
Oh, for sure.
But the word says something, and this is what gets us as believers in trouble. We make the word say what we want it to say. Because if we really took it that way, there would probably be fewer divorces if I really because how do I repent from that every day? Every time I go home to my new wife or my new husband, how do I repent from that? How do I repent from that? That's scripture. How do I repent from that? Right. Every time I'm with them, my very marriage is a sin, and every time I lay with them, I'm sinning. How do I repent from that?
Right.
Okay. So when we think through it and we think about, marriage, and we think about different things. So let me dispel the two lies I brought up, that there's not a guide and what makes marriage seem like it's hard, or that marriage is hard work. So marriage seems like it's hard work if you're selfish, you lack understanding, or you're disobedient. Those three things will make marriage seem like hard work.
Right.
Let's start with being selfish. When you're selfish in marriage, you are looking for the marriage by way of your spouse to serve you. When marriage was put here to serve creation.
Right.
It was put here to serve God's purpose. It was not put here for it to serve Damon. It was not put here to serve Tamika. It was put here to serve something greater than Damon and Tamika. But it took Damon and Tamika being combined together to serve it. Okay? So selfishness. Lack of understanding. The church does a horrible job about teaching about marriage, preparing us for it, whatever that may be.
Right.
The church does a horrible job about teaching about marriage.
Right. And that's just in church or believers, but even in homes.
In homes.
That's where it starts at. Yeah. Even right in your own house, living room.
But the people that's sitting in that living room are dependent on the church to teach them. And then they bring that home. Having a conversation with a brother the other day, and the word of God says, if a woman, we know the scripture's been abused, but if a woman has a question, let her keep silent in church and let her ask her husband at home.
Right.
That sets an expectation that the husband should be able to know. But can the husband actually go somewhere and get the answers that he doesn't know? That sets an expectation. Nope.
Oh.
So now she's looking to the pastor to give her answers instead of her husband. And then the husband is not spiritually disciplined enough to go and pursue the answers. So if I can't get it from my pastor, who are the others that I can seek out to get the answers so that my wife is able to ask me questions at home?
Right.
Right. So not understanding it. And the third is disobedience. And sadly, I think that some of the disobedience starts before the marriage.
Definitely.
Go ahead.
No, because everything you just mentioned is true, because we all experience it, because we're this. So we all are selfish. Really?
You're all just scared. Okay,
right.
We're flesh.
There you go.
I got you.
So at some point in our life, when we come through that birth canal, all of that comes with it: selfishness, disobedience. And what was the third thing?
Disobedience and lack of understanding. Yeah.
Right. So that's why it's so important, and I'm gonna let you finish that. That we should even think about or teach or whatever you want to do ahead of time. Talk to people about working on their own individual self. because that's where it starts. You have to work on yourself as an individual before you ever come to be one with this person, so you guys can become.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a lot of self-work.
Yeah, but it's
that we do miss in marriage, because if we do work on ourselves as much as we should, then it makes it easier, like you say, or it's not hard work, but it definitely is work.
But it definitely takes effort, intentional effort. But it's a mindset too of, I don't care how well I know my individual self when it's time for me to die, because that's what marriage asks you to do, to die.
Oh, for sure.
I don't know the dying me.
Right.
I don't know the me on the cross.
Right.
Right. And one of the most challenging things for husbands to recognize and come to grips with, I feel like every spiritually mature husband has a Garden of Gethsemane moment. Let this cup pass. Because when you come face to face with the fact that for your family to make it, for your marriage to make it, that you have to sacrifice for people who may or may not honor that sacrifice in the moment, and yet you still have to drink the cup.
Right.
It can make marriage seem bitter. But I cannot forsake my duty to get on the cross. Husbands have to die first. And that's easy. I love the way T.D. Jakes and a couple other preachers have put it. And say, and they kind of poke some fun at women. They saying, y'all are out here, submit. You give me something to submit. You got to submit. He got to die. I have to completely transform and die. And here's the thing. Here's the reality. I have to die for the person who's saying crucify him. That I'm being prayed about. Right. As a husband, God change his heart, and God make him this, and God make him that. Not God help me to be in this marriage and do my part, but God, him and him and him. And every time that prayer is about me and not for me, you're essentially screaming, crucify him.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And so, but where I come with the disobedience part is sometimes God is telling you, this ain't the one. Sis, this ain't the one, bruh. And so now you're in this marriage, and all of a sudden you get this epiphany that this ain't the one. God said, oh, wait a minute.
Right.
I told you that beforehand. So now you're going to have to wait for all things to work together for your good. Call them according to my purpose, those who love the Lord. You're going to have to wait for all things to work for your good. No, I'm going to just go and make this worse.
Yeah.
Ooh, come on, don't get me started tonight.
For sure.
Don't get me started. I'm feeling the need. The desire
what
to get started.
Our parents used to tell us, a hard head makes
a hard head make a soft behind. They ain't necessarily use that word.
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, all of these things are really things that we should think about, or sometimes, or a lot of times, take for granted.
Yeah.
About marriage.
It is. So now the lie that there's no guide to this. And there is, it's in the word. So when friend and I were talking, I said, you know what I'm figuring out?
And when you do that, I'm going to go back to something in a minute.
What I'm figuring out, and it's a tough pill to swallow, I always talk about being a Christ husband. So now put yourself as a husband. Okay, husbands, I want you to just close your eyes. This way you really need to read your words so you can understand. I want you to close your eyes and put yourself in Jesus's shoes. Now you are the Jesus in your marriage. You're the Jesus in your marriage. Let me tell you, come on, fellas, just close your eyes, walk with me for a minute. You are the Jesus of your marriage. I'm going to modernize this thing for you, right? So you out here living your best life, you in glory. You see yourself like Tupac say, picture me rolling. You can see yourself. You at your best, you at your optimal. You got the great career, you got chicks knocking on your door, you got your pick running a little, and God say, there she go. Now I need you to put down your robe and your crown and go and serve in marriage with her. Oh, by the way, By the way, it's going to be some people that's against this marriage. It's going to be some people that prophesy against it. It's going to be some people that say it's not a God. It's going to be some people that don't condone it. It's going to be some people, but I want you to understand, you got to walk in this. Now, I need you to be prepared that no matter how much teaching you do, there's some things that she ain't going to get. But you still have to plant the seeds and do it without wrath and bitterness. Okay. You ready? You keep going. There's some people that are going to question the type of husband you are, and you have to keep being the husband that you are. Okay. There's some times that you're going to have to say that you're going to want to do some things and know you need to do some things that I'm instructing you to do. And your wife is going to be the hindrance to that, or attempt to hindering it, not maliciously, but because she doesn't get it in that season. And you don't fully understand it yourself, that you're going to have to look at her. Don't you say this out loud. Get thee behind me, Satan.
You better not say that out loud.
Don't say that out loud, but you're going to have to say, get thee behind me, Satan. Because you recognize that it is through the one that is closest to you that the enemy is going to try and come through to deceive you and lead you away, to manipulate access so that they can do some stuff to you. Oh, hold on. Wait a minute. The people that you are serving with your marriage are going to walk away from you when it gets hard. Oh, hold on. Your bride is going to be standing in the crowd saying, crucify him. Hold on. But I don't want you to give up yet, husband. Don't give up yet, husband, because when she sees the finished work of my transformation in your life, that if you continue to be obedient to what I'm saying, she'll be the first one at your tomb to declare the work that I've done in your life, through your life, that is creating a path for her and your family to move forward. Hold on. Now you're continuing to prepare a place for her to be the effective helpmate that she was always meant to be. Hold on, husband, but I'm going to do one other thing. I got to get you to go this last test, and this is the resetting of marriage. I need you to take marriage back to the garden. Stop trying to have a marriage that is post-fall. I've only done, all that I have done is to try and get marriage back to its garden state. And you are the vehicle that I want to use to do that.
Can y'all open your eyes now?
You can open your eyes now.
Okay. Whew.
And that's what it means to be a husband.
It does. And that is heavy. When you go back to the beginning of talking about that, that's heavy. Because that's what Christ did.
That's what Christ did. So if I am if I'm a representative sample of Christ in my marriage, all of that applies to me. So if I am ain't none of that easy.
Right.
Ain't none of that. And that's the short version. Ain't none of that easy.
Right. Oh, that's what I was going to say. I was sitting here thinking about what I was going to say. So that's the spiritual side of it. That's really good that you just explained. You know what I'm saying? That a lot of times people don't get, or the assignment part of it. And you talked about earlier the practical part of marriage, which is our everyday, what we go through, our ins and outs, our thises and that's. And then there's the spiritual side of it, you know, and that's for each one of us. But for you to understand it like that and go back to intentionally reminding yourself and remembering and doing whatever you have to do in a spiritual place to stay there.
Oh, yeah.
And to stay on that cross.
You have to
stay on that cross. So the work is completed and finished. Yeah.
And the practical part of that is, that's why I love the word, because the practical is tied up with the spiritual in this. So on the practical part, what did it take Jesus to do his mission? Prayer. He was very intentional about spending time with his bride. Right. So it was prayer, very intentional about that. He was an instructor to his bride. Even when they didn't want to listen, he was an instructor to his bride. He was a protector. of his bride. He was an equipper of his bride. So am I protecting, equipping, preparing, teaching my bride to do the things that make her effective in what she's got to do? That's why I say Proverbs 31 is the perfect ideal on marriage. And the reason that Proverbs 31 is the perfect image, or to me, the most comprehensive view of marriage, is because Proverbs 31 is as close to a garden marriage as you get since Adam and Eve, because it shows the value of the symbiotic partnership between husband and wife. The teamwork.
Right.
The teamwork. Right. This woman, and listen, this was a confident woman. It says she had young maidens. That means she had young virgins running around her house. Right. They prim proper, smelling they musk, whatever, and she ain't even worried about them tempting her husband. Right. Because she set the tone for her house. Y'all in here, but make no mistake of who the queen is.
The boundaries, the tone.
Yeah.
Right.
She said all of that.
So I was just going to say early, go through this up, because I've been thinking about this, not for just what you were saying or the husband or the groom, but for us as well, our wills. And I think a lot of times we don't understand really how strong our will is. when Christ was in that garden, it's like, not my will. And will breaking, and the process of will breaking for each individual, and really surrendering and letting that will go. Because we'll say it, all the time in the prayer, not my will, Lord, but thy will be done. And when he go, this is your will and not mine.
Yeah.
And either you get in your feelings, or you get however you get when you really are strong-willed and want your will to play out.
Yes.
But how important it is to surrender that will.
Yes.
To Christ, to God.
And even like husband and wife have to do it, but I have to set an example in my home that I lay my will down. Now listen, I'm laying my will down to God,
right?
Not to her,
right?
Husbands, I'm going to look right here in this camera. Part of our challenge is that too often we hearken unto the voice of our wife over God, right? On one hand, she wants us to be that godly man, but on the other hand, being that godly man also requires a level of sacrifice from her.
Exactly.
Right? And that means that I'm going to have moments where there is not peace in the home, not because they're really at this is one of those where God says, they're not rejecting you, they're rejecting me. Because if I'm following what he say, then God. So I had a friend when I was telling them that marriage is,
and that's why submission is so important on both parts.
On both parts,
because you're submitting that will.
It's a trickle down thing. Submit to God. She submits to him. But when I was telling a friend like marriage isn't that hard, and he was throwing some curveballs at me, I said, listen, here's what I'm learning, and I'm learning to practice it. I have not perfected it, but I said anytime I find my marriage being hard, I go and check those three things. God, am I being selfish in the moment? God, am I not understanding something? Give me wisdom on this. God, am I being disobedient in the moment? If God says no, and you're doing what I want you to do, then the responsibility is no longer mine. Hey, you talk to your daughter because I'm doing what you told me to do.
Right. Yeah.
I'm doing what you told me to do, and therefore it takes the burden off of my shoulders and places it back in God's hands, because I'm doing my part. And once I do this right here and say, go talk to your daughter, or whatever, you ain't got to talk to her. That ain't none of my business.
Right.
Because you just confirmed for me, I'm doing what I need to do. And if I'm not, give me the strength to do what I need to do, so that then you can go and talk to her. And I'm good. So that takes pressure off of me.
Right. And doing it with right motive. So when you do go to God and be like, I'm doing my part, you've surrendered, you've submitted, surrendered your will, submitted to his way, and then you're obedient, and then you're doing it, not going, how is it? Because it can look, how one thing looks like it it's the same or it's the right thing. And just because it looks like or it is the right thing doesn't mean it's coming from the right motive.
You can
So
do
that's the part of it.
You can do the right thing the wrong way.
The wrong way. So definitely having the right intention and motive behind it, because if you don't, it's still not going to profit the peace or what you need in the relationship
At all.
Because then it's like, I did it, God, you know what you told me to do in this, you know, which, and then now let's see what happens.
And I have been that guy, and I've
been that girl,
and I've learned to be like, hey, I did my part. Okay, you can take this burden back. I'm good. And God, like, I got this. And once you do that, it does lift up and just play my part.
Right.
And it does lift. I have found that it gets me out of stressful moments really, really quick. Once I sit down and I go through that checklist.
Right.
Right. And so,
because it takes the selfishness out of it, because you're wanting the best for the team and for you both. And as long as you have the enemy, I'll say, keeping you one-sided or one-minded, to where you're always, you know, or you want your point of view or my this or my that to be upfront or seen, no matter how the problem gets solved.
Right.
As long as it's solved.
Right.
Then you're doing it the right way.
Yeah. I'm gonna tell you something that God told me at the beginning of the year, concerning our marriage, specifically concerning me and our marriage. And it is hard to swallow until he started showing me. He said, you have got to remove, husbands, I want you to hear this, because I don't think this is me alone. You have got to get rid of that woman you gave me mentality. You got to remove it out of how you act. You got to remove it out of how you speak. You got to remove it in how you respond. You have got to do away with that.
Thank you, God.
Yeah, that ain't so good for you.
Oh,
but,
okay.
No, but it is. Right. But it's something that he pointed out to me, and he brought to me. You've got to be able to get rid of that woman you gave me mentality. Okay, God, what does that mean? It means that when you said I do to me for her, you signed up for this. You could have rejected the gift. You signed up for this. And now that this is the woman that I have gave you, and if I gave her to you, remember what the scripture says. It said, what father would give a bad gift to their child?
Right.
So when you say this woman you gave me, you're saying something about my integrity as your father, because you're saying that I gave you a bad gift.
Right.
What I might have given you is an unrefined gift, but I did not give you a bad gift.
Right. And then it gets a little fuzzy, a little blurry then.
Gets a little fuzzy and a little blurry. Exactly. It's like, what?
Hold on.
What? Right. God, you just said, let me put another nail in you. Let me stretch you a little wider. Let me hit you with the cat of nine tails a little harder. Let me give you another stripe. But he says, no, there's power in understanding that as your father, I would never give you a bad gift.
Right.
Okay. Gotcha, God. Okay, cool. And that's that journey of understanding and growing and maturing as a husband, right? So that's that thing. But it brought me to something else. And I was sharing with a friend. I don't think we either don't hear each other or we don't comprehend what we're saying to each other about something. And so God was showing me something, and he gave me a way to articulate it particularly if you are if you are a black male and you were raised, and this is probably true for white males as well, but I just know how black males are usually raised by single mothers. We are usually raised by very, very, very dominant single mothers, right? And because we are raised by very dominant single mothers who taught us that their dominance was to protect us, we behave in ways that will seem controlling to that black female, when in reality is how I was trained by a woman how to protect, and to protect was to control. So it's not even intentional. Now, this is something I learned about.
Let's talk about that line though. But
Go
finish.
ahead. No, go ahead.
No, that because that can be a thin line. And you know, we talk about it a lot with, you know, couples and marriage refresh and stuff like that, because that line can seem
What line?
of the control. This is controlling.
But here's the thing. Here's what wives have to understand. This is why it's important to understand the background that your husband came from or that your wife came from. He can't see the line because there was no distinction.
That's good.
Mom protected me by controlling me. You better be in here before the street light. You better not do this, or I'm gonna beat the tar out of you, right? Because the young men typically got a more brutal whooping from their mother because she felt like she had to prove she was the man. When she did, and that was her perception.
Or respect.
Well,
like,
however you want to put it, right? But that is the thing that she felt she needed to do. I'm controlling and restricting him for his protection. So now if you've been raised in that, you don't know the difference between control and protection. Because how you were protected is you were controlled. Which is once you got from under her hand, you went buck wild. Right? Because you were protected through control. So when he gets into being a husband, he doesn't know any other way. He doesn't even see what you see as controlling as being controlling. He's protecting, and all he can see is you're resisting my protection.
Okay. And that's for the single mother. What about the son that has both parents?
It can still, in fairness, it can still play out the same way. It depends on how he was raised with even with that dad. A overly masculine, overly aggressive father can push his son to one or two ways. He can make him very aggressive, or he can make him very docile. In general, how a father or a two-parent home, let me not even say that. In general, how a two-parent home will work in some instances, or should work, is that there is more latitude to explore and learn with boundaries, right?
Agreed.
So
and I think that it should be and healthy and explain to your children, because a lot of times they don't understand. And then even when they see mom submitting, sometimes they see that a certain way and either grow up and appreciate it or resent it.
Yeah.
And I'm not doing that. Or either you'll hear comments. It's funny sometimes. Well, did dad say it was okay? Or it was like what he says goes, you know, or he's the boss of everybody, you know, of the house.
My own daughter done said that. So why dad got to control everything?
Oh, yeah. And I wasn't saying it from that. But no,
I remember it.
Right. But even DJ, when he was younger, I think I told him something to do or whatever. And it was like, well, can we check with dad? Is that okay? Negro, you got about 1.2 seconds.
No, that's 0.2 seconds too many.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, you know, I tried.
Yeah. No, and I get it when you see a certain thing and them understand the boundaries or whatever. That doesn't negate or reduce mom's authority or anything of that nature.
And then for me to be able to understand where he was coming from because he's a child and not understand it, and then don't try to prove a point.
Right.
I didn't have to go prove a point or tear you down or let me tell you,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's very important, of seeing. A lot of times kids don't get to see the trials that their parents go through.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't see the inner workings of the marriage. They just know, they see the fruit of the marriage. Good fruit or bad fruit, they see the fruit. They don't see the inner workings a lot of the times. Right. And when they do get to see the inner workings, then sometimes that, if you don't level set it, then it can have some very severe consequence about how they view marriage going forward.
Right.
Right. Here's the other thing. I was talking with a friend, and just again, more I keep learning about me. So add on top that, you got to control a mother, and that's how they protect you. Add on top of that, if you're in a situation where you have to grow up sooner than in certain ways than you expected, right? If you had a parent that had a dependency, or you had a parent that had to work all the time or whatever, and you have to grow up sooner, that also shapes how you carry yourself,
Right.
because you had to do things differently because of the circumstances. So you didn't get to be a kid, right? You didn't really get to be a kid. And that has its impacts and implications as well.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Right. And so that carries over into our adulthood.
And that's on both sides.
That's on both sides. That's on both sides. Right. And so all of that plays in terms of like getting to know your spouse and where they come from and what they've been through. I would tell my sons and my daughter, first thing you need to get to do is spend a little time around their family before you talk about anything serious. Understand the family dynamics, because that family dynamic planted seeds in that person that you're talking about being with.
Oh, for sure.
Right. That family planted those dynamics planted some seeds that you're going to see the fruit of.
No matter how much that you say and you talk about, and that's why you do have to be intentional of what you want your relationship and marriage to be, and be realistic. And that's when I was talking about expectations earlier, whatever coming into it, because a lot of times we're kind of like, oh, it's gonna be like this, or I want it like this, and it's like as soon as we come together, it's gonna transform and just be how I thought it was gonna be in my mind, without doing the work or realizing that you are a product of your environment, your upbringings, your DNA, and all of that. And same here, vice versa.
Right.
And then that you're putting these two individuals together, these people, to become one, or ever becoming that one, with so many different issues,
Yes.
Yeah.
And that is so,
and we just don't get here, even if we have every intention to be someone, and be that person, until we unpack a lot of our own baggage and do our individual work. Like I was saying earlier, you may not be that person right then, but you want to become that person, or you're going to work hard on becoming that person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
and giving grace to each other. But those are the things that a lot of times we don't, you don't discuss or talk about, because you put on the topic naked.
Yeah.
It's pretty much becoming naked and letting this person see you naked, transparent.
Yeah.
And it's scary a lot of times. So a lot of times you don't get to see that up front. And sometimes it takes years for you, because you're steadily showing bits and pieces of you,
right,
naked, until you're the full picture of, here, this is who I am, what I am, for as much as because sometimes we don't even know ourselves.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And
The damage that life has just had on us.
The damage that life has had on us. And those are the things that I'm continuing to discover about me. Like the hidden scars that you forget about because they don't have any pain. They're just a ugly scar that you see, the hidden scars. And like, I can remember when I got that scar. And if I just focus on the when I got it, then I can remember, like, the pain is almost like it's a journey. It's on one of my ankles that I got my foot caught in the back wheel of my cousin's 10-speed, right, while I was riding on the back. And just thinking about that scar right now, I can remember the pain on that day. I can remember when they poured the hydrogen peroxide on it. I can remember everything about that day. I can visually see what my leg looked like or my ankle looked like that day. Right. And back then, you go to the doctor, all that. No, they just cleaned it up, put some triple antibiotic on it, and put a bandage on it. I was off playing in another 10 to 15 minutes, right?
Wait, hold on. I'm not that much older than you. What did they put on it now?
Some no.
I was about to say triple antibiotic.
No, they put the iodine.
Okay,
the
iodine or cuticle.
Yeah, that's that. The red looking stuff. They put some hydrogen peroxide on it, some of that on there, and then they put that bandage on it, went on a couple of them big old band-aids, and I was back off playing again.
Okay.
And I still had a scar to this day. But I don't think about the scar unless I look at it and I remember it. Then that's the only time I can recall, right? And sometimes we have those hidden scars that are out of the way until something comes to make you see them, and then you recognize, do I need to deal with it based on the intensity of the memory, right?
And then how do I deal with it?
How do I deal with it? And I think that some of dealing with it is just by talking about it, or reliving it, or saying, what did it plant in me? And I recognize, like, some of the things going through with my mom, as much as I loved her, I recognized just within the last month some of the things that it planted in me, and how that impacts who I am and how I carry myself.
And I think it also helps us a lot of times when we realize those things or whatever.
I promise we'd still talk about marriage. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Because when you talked about that for us, dang, I lost my thought. But you was talking about your mom. A lot of times going back or reliving a lot of those things, not that you don't love your parents or try to respect them, but from your point of view or your truth or your reality or however you saw that or it scarred you, for them to be accountable for their part of it. And it's not that you are trying to make them look a certain way or embarrass them or any of those things, but for them to own their part if they can or willing or here, so you actually can move on from it and heal. And both sides, if your parents are still alive or living and you get to have these conversations as much as you can and unpack a lot of this stuff, it really helps the relationship on both sides, because it comes from like, hey, this is a hard thing and it needs to be addressed, and I'm not trying to make you feel bad for, what happened with you or how you treated me or whatever, because they had their own set of issues or things they needed to heal from.
Yeah. I will say this, and I'm going to say something that might be, again, controversial. And depending on how you grew up, for a lot of people, they grew up, if their dad was absent, as the only villain they knew was the absent father. But there are some present mothers, and I'm not saying it was intentional, there are some present mothers that need to pick up their villain badge as well. And it may have been that they were doing the best that they knew how.
Right. But because that's what you get.
That's what you get. But it didn't stop the fact that they still caused the wound that they caused. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So it might have been the best that they knew how, but it didn't stop it from being for them being having villain actions.
Right.
Some things that they did that were villainous, right? And for me, and especially because my parents are no longer here, to me, just being able to take in that very thought has been healing, because I'm able to appreciate the totality of who my mom was, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Right. And a lot of times people miss that. We do that in so many things, even with our Christ life or spiritual life. When we talked about on Sunday, a lot of the good things we try to gravitate towards are the positives. And not that we don't want to be positive people, and there are positive things, but we don't like the total package. I'll put it that way. Everything. And that is the good, the bad, and the ugly. Live with it, deal with it. It is what it is. Heal with it and move on.
And you have to be able to live with to move on and keep going, right?
And keep going.
But I think, circling, bringing this all the way back to marriage, all of those things, I think, are negated or not known. And so there are some behaviors in our spouse that we take very, very personally because we either didn't take the time to learn and know, or they didn't have the ability to articulate so we could learn and know. And so now I'm taking their response to me.
Learn and know, personally. Like when? What do you mean by that?
Learn and know who they are, their life story, their challenges that they've been through. There's some things, and I won't get into it in the air, that I've recognized and know and understand about you. Now, whether you would agree with me or not is a whole nother thing, but it's time that I spend in prayer, and I feel like God has revealed or uncovered certain things because of the prayer that I am praying. But as I know and understand those things, I learn to I'll say this. I've said this to you several times, several years ago.
What's that?
And that is, I had to learn when you were talking to Mary Kelly and when you were talking to me. Because sometimes you were talking to her and me, because me and my mother-in-law and I actually have some similar demeanors, right? I can understand that. And so you sometimes, when I'm saying something, I don't get credit for just Damon saying it. You're reacting to the credit that my mother-in-law has spent. And so I don't get my full credit, right? And that can be frustrating to me, because I'm like, I'm not even getting my full credit, because what I'm saying is being judged before it gets out of my mouth. And you're not even judging my words, you're judging her words in that perception.
Right. And I was going to say, it is the same to me, because until you realize that and understand it, it's like I'm not. Either you're in denial or you just don't know. It's like, oh, wait a minute. I think so. So where is this coming from? What does it spark? What are the similarities of what she said or did, and, insane. And then, how I respond to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely.
And motives can be completely different. Reasonings can be completely different. But it goes back to our credit card analogy that we teach. I'm not getting my full credit.
Right.
And when God had to show that to me years ago, it still don't make me feel good, but I understand it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And so sometimes I think with spouses are not getting their full credit. They're not getting their full credit.
For everyone that has never heard that credit card analogy, you want to go like in about 2 minutes. Can you? Yeah.
Because we about at time. So the credit card teaching.
I still want to ask something before time's out.
No. The credit card analogy is that one of the things that we try and teach couples is this. And we always look at it like this. Say, imagine you applied for a credit card. And when you apply for the credit card, they say you've been approved for a $10,000 limit. You can activate your card and start using it, right? And that's what they say to you. So you sit on it for about a month, and you finally see something like, ooh, I just got to have these, $1,000 shoes, and I got a $10,000 limit. No biggie. And you go and swipe your card, and they say declined. Like, declined? Hold on. Whoa, this card ain't never been used. You swipe it again. Try it again. Decline. Hold on one moment. Now you embarrassed. You don't know that you calling the people. You trying to figure out what's going on.
Right.
So you call them and they say, you listen to the automated. Your credit limit is 10,000. I thought so. I had to spend it. And he's like, please press 1 to speak to an agent. And you get to the agent. Agent say, oh yeah, your credit limit is 10,000. However, your available limit, your available access is only $200. You're like, hold on, what do you mean? It's like, this isn't this one of those cards where you need to pay it down before you get to use the full limit. Y'all didn't say that I had to pay it. You didn't say this was a secured credit card. Oh, it's not a secured credit card, but we want to see your proof of being able to pay us first.
Right.
Even though you hadn't spent anything before we will let you use your full credit limit, and the amount you pay is what you get to use. Right? That's what happens in relationships a lot of the time. Is you walk in thinking you got your full credit limit because you've not done anything to diminish your credit limit, only to find out through transactions, life events, that you don't have your full limit that you thought. You're operating at a deficit. Matter of fact, you're overdrawn on an account that you haven't even used yet.
You ain't even swiped.
You ain't even swiped yet. And so we give that credit card analogy because we say you as a spouse have to work to make sure that your spouse gets their full credit limit, that you don't make them pay for other people's transactions.
Right.
Yeah.
Only their own.
Only their own.
And
right.
When they use up that 10 grand.
And even then you have to do some debt forgiveness.
You do. You have to do grace forgiveness.
Yeah. Whatever you want to call it. All of that.
Yeah. You do
all
debt forgiveness.
All of that.
Write it off and let's start all over.
Yeah. So you said you had a question.
Yeah, so I was listening to something that I know we've talked about it before, or you've talked about it, and I think you said other men have talked about it. And so a lot of times I don't think we as women sometimes fully understand, and that's not just this, it's probably quite a few things that we try to understand.
Go ahead.
Or sympathize or whatever. Ahead. So he was saying, so for men to want to be that husband that you were talking about earlier, and something does not go right in the marriage or wrong or whatever, how we look or respond sometimes to that with a disappointment, it does something to you all, because that's like one of the most feared things, that I've disappointed her. Or the look that we can give, they say it's this look. Or maybe it's an action that we give to put you there, but it's not intentional, I think, a lot of times. Or maybe we don't understand the magnitude of what it does. If you want to talk about or speak on that for just a little bit.
So let me make sure I'm understanding the question. So when we fail or miss your expectations, your response to us missing it deflates us.
Pretty much.
Pretty much. I would say absolutely that is something that happens to men.
And does it all come with the preconceived or fear that you already kind of have going in?
So here's a reality for men. That people may not want to acknowledge. Men live with a constant understanding that a lot of times they are tolerated, not just accepted. So it is what I can provide, what I bring to the table. That whole what I bring to the table is a completely different discussion when it comes between men and women. What I bring to the table for a woman means like, or when a woman says, what does he bring to the table? A lot of times how that is perceived or comes across is, what is he providing? What's tangible? What can I put my hands on? Right? When a man says, what is she bringing to the table? That's why we let women get away with our money is his money is our money, and my money is my money. Right? We let them get away because we don't really care about her money. Right? What we look for is an intangible thing that they bring to the table, which is peace. So when you fail your family or feel like you missed the mark, you do have a concern that, oh my goodness, I'm going to lose my family, because here the odds are stacked against him. When a marriage ends, the man loses the most. He loses his children. He loses his finances. He loses any possessions that he's worked for. He loses credibility in the community, because usually it's going to fall on him as to why the marriage didn't work, regardless of what she did or didn't do. He loses a certain level of stature, even among his male friends, because you couldn't keep your family together, right? He loses so much that women do not lose. When women move on from a marriage, she's seen as strong. It took you probably had to put up with a lot, even when people don't even know the circumstance. Oh, you had to put up, I'm sure you had to put up with so much, and you just did the best thing that's for you, girl, and for you and your children, and blah, blah, blah. There's a level of support that exists for women that doesn't exist for men. And so because of that, that man has a fear of losing everything. Right.
So with that fear, because you're right there, then it starts behaviors, because they're in their mind at this point, or haven't had the conversation or actually talked about whatever it is, because everything is not major. It could be something minor, but he takes it how he wants to take it. So he doesn't. And then
he doesn't take it the way he wants to take it. He takes it the way the data has shown him it will go.
Then it starts behaviors.
A lot of times,
not on every occasion, because it's inevitable. You're going to have some disappointment, and all of those things just come with relationships, marriage, period.
Yes.
But how, and I'm still not like downplaying or downsizing it, because I realize it plays a big part for you guys. But even so, if you never like get the heart, or that's not how I'm trying to degrade or see you or put you in that space. But at the same time, I think for women, and I'll just say this for women, a lot of times, especially if it's not just the one, or you have had a pattern of, difficult or bad relationships, or a lot of disappointment, I'll say, not that you shouldn't give that full balance, on that credit card, but accountability. It can't be, because everything can be used two ways, it can't be every time this happens, because then it goes back to that manipulation, or having narcissistic behaviors or whatever. I know that new word that everybody throws out, but it can't be to where her voice doesn't get heard. And I know you have to be careful about that, because it goes back to communication and learning each other, to where she doesn't voice it for whatever concern, or it seems like it's going that way all the time, or this behavior is gonna happen because he feels this way. And sometimes you don't even know,
right.
And sometimes it's things that he's learned from his environment, or how he's grown up. This is how we deal with this. They're gonna feel disappointed in you, and so this is how you go deal with this issue or this problem.
Well, but I don't think that it's men automatically default to that. It is how it is in a lot of cases of people I've talked to. It is how that woman looks at him with a level. Accountability is fine. Men live with accountability all day long. It's what we breathe, eat, and whatever, right? But it is how she conveys that disappointment. Her face, her demeanor, her posture, her tone, all of that. Because that man knows that in that same moment, that when she disappoints him like that, he cannot have any of those responses. He can't have any of those responses, because she's going to take it a completely different way. He ain't going to never live it down. If he reacts to her the way that she reacts to him, he going to have to live with that for the rest of that marriage. because that is it is the difference, and it gets chalked up as well. This is just how women are. Well,
Right.
that's but
And
that's a,
saying
but that's
that's just
not a
how men
but
are.
that's not a level of responsibility and accountability,
Right.
right? And here's the thing, right? And me and you had this happen. I won't say this year, or maybe it's earlier. Did like in the moment you recognize like this is the biggest thing that I hear from men. I can so let's just say 3 months ago,
Mm-hmm.
let's say end of November, I left a cabinet open, right? I didn't say I literally did this. I'm just giving a scenario. I left a
You
cabinet.
probably did.
I left
though.
a cabinet open. And you've conveyed to me how that irritates you of me leaving the cabinet open, right?
Mhm.
And I did it in November. But last time I did it was November. I ain't done it since then, but it's November. You closed it. You ain't say a word in November, right? So then something happens in February that you did. And in the moment you do it, I say, hey, honey, I want to talk to you about this thing and how it made me feel, right? And so I start telling you about it. Then in that moment, it's like, I know I did that and I'm sorry, but I mean, you do this and you go all the way back to November about the cabinet being open.
Right.
You didn't address it then.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't address it until I had something to say to you about something that's in the present.
Yes. We
And
did
then
talk
if I
about
say to you, hold on, let's finish addressing that. No, we ain't gonna talk about my stuff and don't want to talk about your stuff or whatever. And for being they
that's
like,
not what I said.
no,
Oh, but
I'm
you're
just
giving
saying,
that. Yes,
I'm just
that's
saying,
how
but
it
that's
happens
what
a lot.
happens for men a lot. And they
Mhm.
like, so my feelings don't even really matter
Right.
because when I try to address my feelings,
Mhm.
and I'm gonna talk about why the side chick be winning, or the appearance of why the side chick be winning, right? Because she ain't actually winning, but it's the appearance. It's who is the girl? Oh my goodness. Because I actually like the song. It's with her and her Jasmine Sullivan. And she said, why these hoes be winning? You know, yeah, she is. I love the song. You're gonna make a hoe out of me is the name of the song, right? And I promise you, and it's an interesting song when you live because she opened up. I made a profile on Tinder since you left me to be with her. Said something about my body, got me sitting at home judging my body. You don't love me no more, right? So it's an interesting song because I like dissect lyrics, but it is that man sitting there saying, you're not hearing me.
Mhm.
We can't address my feelings in a moment because we got to go back. And so that's always almost becomes a defensive mechanism.
Mhm.
So now we got to go back and address your feelings. So now I got to
Mhm.
apologize for how I made you feel about telling you about my feelings.
Right.
Right. So my feelings never get addressed.
Mhm.
So now when I say about why the side chick seemed like she be winning, she let him get his feelings out.
Mm. Right. So we did talk about this because I don't think people or women realize this as much. And it's funny just to be sitting down or hear a couple,
Yeah.
in a safe place, let them talk or do whatever. A lot of times, and I'm gonna say this, that is the way it happens. When it's time for him to speak his piece or say his part or go back, the woman does, or immediately, I don't know if it's just something that's there,
Mhm.
or go, it's always tit for tat, or you're going
Uh-huh.
back and forth. Oh, you did this or you did that. So when you're trying to have a meaningful conversation or actually get something done, you really don't get anything resolved because it's going back to the situation before, or
Yeah.
when you did it,
Yeah.
or when you did it,
We'll
or
never
when you
even get
did it, or when you
Yeah.
did it. So there has to be at some point, and what happens is we don't know how to communicate or let the issue be the issue that a
Let
lot
the
of times
issue be
people
the
take for
issue.
granted at that point, and have your voice when it happens. Have your voice in that moment if it's the right moment. If not, you do have to be intentional about going back to those moments, because a lot of times it gets swept to the pile is this high, and a lot of times that's when you have so much to unpack at one time. But voice it at that moment, so then when he does have an issue or wants to put something on the table or talk about his feelings, you don't sit there and go like, Well, you did it to me.
Yeah, all of that.
Right.
All of that. But in this, just a side note, another one.
But I want everybody to be conscious of this. So just think, if you can, or be intentional about your next conversation or back and forth. Like, oh, do I do this? You know?
And we don't even
or
bother.
Do I respond like that?
We don't even bother that. We at a point we just stop trying. Because it's like you're not gonna hear my feel. It ain't even shut down. We shut off. We shut off. And we just operate in responsibility. And so because you're not going to hear me, you're not going. It's interesting because you want this. You want what you're unwilling to give, right? If you want it, you have to be willing to give it.
Right.
And this is the thing.
Because I think it's a learned behavior.
It is a learned. I believe it's a learned behavior. I can agree with that. Let me say something else controversial because I'm on a roll tonight.
Oh Lord.
I'm on a roll of controversial things. I finally figured out because I asked the question. All of the women got quiet. Nobody won't say anything. I played the song by Mary J. Blige, Mr. Wrong, and I asked, why do women like bad dudes? Why do the guys who do the things that they're supposed to do not really, I mean, husbands and all, not get the respect, honor, appreciation that is due to them or what have you? Why is that? And when I get cricket, creak, creak. I wish I had my button because I got the sound. I get the crickets, right?
Right.
And the reason why, I found out why.
Why?
Because a good man disarms a woman's two primary weapons.
What?
Her vagina and her victimization.
You said a good man?
A good man disarms her two primary weapons. If I can't persuade him with between my legs, I'm going to persuade him by being a victim. And when you are good in doing the right things, it's difficult to play victim, and he doesn't give in to sex. He isn't easily manipulated with sex. But a dude who is not a good dude, he'll go get sex from somewhere else.
Right. At that point, he's just being selfish.
Who?
The guy that...
The bad guy?
Yeah.
Okay. But listen, this is what I'm saying. The good dude disarms both. The bad dude actually empowers one of them. So he's like, oh, shoot, you ain't going to win me over with sex because I can go down the road, right? But as soon as he goes down the road, he amps up her victim. He supercharges her victimization. Because now, I'm the victim. Look, I've been a good woman and he went down the road and cheated on me. And so now she got a story to arm people with, right? It is funny. It's funny. I was reading a joke the other day. I don't know if I shared it with you. But it is a joke. Is really funny to me because it said, listen, if your woman apologizes and then comes back to you later and say, after thinking about it, that means that she went to the board and they didn't approve.
Really?
Yeah, she went to the board. She went to the board with her friend, like, yeah, girl, I had to apologize to him because he was right. And they're like, girl, why you did it? And after the board overrode her approval, her apology, she had to come back and say, I've been thinking. True. Well, it's a good joke.
That's a good joke.
I enjoyed the joke. It's a good joke. So y'all don't cancel me. Next Vile Sex and Housekeeping be just my wife, because y'all like, he got to get off, he's saying crazy stuff. But I'm saying that I am hearing men,
real stuff or truthful stuff.
I am hearing men who are ready to talk but have no outlet, not just about their relationships but about life in general. They don't have a safe place to bleed.
Oh, okay, because I was about to say, talk to who? Because it's like,
no, men are ready to talk, but I don't want to talk if you're not going to hit my feelings. I don't want to, if what I got to say isn't going to be at least entertained. Yeah. The feelings. Yeah.
That's not the feeling.
Oh, that one. Okay. Don't forget to come and pick up your feelings. Yeah. So if you're not willing to like listen to him, and this is the thing, we as men in general, we ain't looking to just pour out like like a little girl and cry everywhere and blah blah blah. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but
because
we're not.
we do have to learn that we as women are built differently than you guys, so things are gonna be different.
Yeah,
period. Not wrong, just different.
And
then we have to accept those differences. That's the thing we have an issue with a lot of times. Accepting the differences.
Yes, you have to accept those differences. And here's something that I think happens to women, particularly if they grow up in home with brothers. They tote masculine energy without knowing it.
Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
What are you trying to say, Damon T?
I just said it. I just said it. We can have that conversation off air. I just said it.
Or on air.
You ain't want to have it on air now. Let's not have that on air. It is because there's a masculine energy that comes with that. I don't care how feminine you are externally, but there's a masculine behavior that you might not even be aware that you're toting.
Probably not, because that's your environment.
That is your environment, but you have to be willing to acknowledge and see it.
Oh, for sure.
Right? And not justify it, whatever. All those good things, right? Oh my goodness, we are having some naked conversation. Listen, if y'all have questions, comments, you want to drop it in there. Hey, Uncle Shan say it's time for that retreat. It's time for that retreat.
Yes.
Hey, listen, I know one thing for sure. If I don't have nobody else that's gonna push me out there in them streets, it's gonna be Uncle Shan. He gonna push me right on out there, boy. Get out there in your purpose and work it. We need to make that happen. We need to make that happen, Uncle Shan. Let's get it. Let's get it going. We need to make that happen. We gotta. When is it? I need brothers. I need to start really like pumping this out there, but we got a men's talk coming up real soon at the Palaver Tree, and I plan on getting raw. So if we ain't ready to cry and bleed, then you probably shouldn't show up, because I plan on like.
Well, don't say that, because you want the people to show up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, we gonna be cute and cuddly, so show on up.
Oh, okay.
That's better.
Yeah.
We're gonna be cute and cuddly, so show on up. But here's the real. There are men are ready to talk, but I don't know if the environment is ready to hear what men have to say, because we are dealing with topics like toxic masculinity. And I believe there is a version of masculinity that is toxic. I won't disagree with that. We want to get back feminine masculinity. Femininity that's toxic as well. We want to get back to a place of masculinity. What does God want a man to look and be like? What does God want a woman to look and be like?
Because he made them what?
Because he made them, right?
Male
and female. I am not going to, unless I'm in a pinch. Let me put it, I can take my VW to anyone to fix it, right? A mechanic worth their salt should be able to fix most of the things on that VW. If I want it fixed well, most efficiently, I should take it to the manufacturer. So if I want my marriage healed and working properly, I should take it back to the manufacturer. Period. I should take it back to the manufacturer. So I believe that God is trying to get us to reset marriage. And resetting marriage means that marriage looks like what it looked like in the garden, which means a lot of the scriptures that we like to grab hold to in the New Testament go out the door, because we're getting back to, if Jesus removed the curse, why are we still taking our marriage through cursed behavior? If Jesus removed the curse, why are we still governing our marriage under curse rules? Because in the original marriage, there was partnership.
Right.
There was partnership. But let me say this time. I hadn't said nothing controversial in the last 3 minutes. Let me say something controversial.
Let's get back to Eden.
Living on top of the world, all of that. So here's the thing, right? So if I want to talk about marriage again, and I want to talk about resetting marriage, there's a couple of things that we need to be aware of. One of those things that we really need to be aware of is women are prone to deception. Bible says it, for the woman was deceived. Why? Because y'all are the more visual creature. We get charged as being the more visual creature. Oh, men like what they see, this and this and that. But y'all don't dress for us. We just had that conversation. Y'all dress for each other. So y'all looking at each other, whatever, right? Or y'all judging each other. So women, how you want to put it. I'm sorry. I'm going to stop. I'm done with saying controversial things for the night.
Critiquing.
Y'all critiquing each other. So here's what I look at for as it relates to resetting that marriage. In order to get our marriage back to an Eden state, you have to understand, be self-aware. So women have to understand that the snake is going to always talk to me first. He's going to always talk to me first, because if he can get to me, he's going to get to my husband.
Right.
Right? He's going to always talk to me first. Husband, you have to recognize that your wife, in y'all's best interest, not malicious, what she believes is in the best interest, will always offer you fruit. Right? You should inspect the fruit and then make a decision. Right. Don't be moved by her curves and your love and her tears and all that. I'm talking about we want to talk about practical things in the Bible. Correct. When Delilah couldn't trick Samson, what she did, she pulled out some tears. When Jezebel thought she was going to win over Jehu, what she did, she put on some makeup. When Sarah was tired of Hagar, she threw a fit.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
All of those, even the Bible says that you are Sarah's daughters. So I can't ignore the practical things of those seeds that are planted in me. Now,
in our nature.
In your nature, right? So if I'm going to get back in the garden, I have to be real about who I am as a woman, as a wife. Now, husbands, because I don't want to get out, I say this: women are deceived, men are just disobedient. She gets tricked. He just does. I know this wrong. I'm going to just do it anyway. Right? That's who we are, right? So what do I want to say? Hold on. Let's get to it. Hey, when I want to please the people and stunt on folks, I'm going to disobey God, i.e. King Saul. When I'm out of place and not doing what God told me to do, because I decided, my army run itself good enough, I can just sit here and chill and look at naked women from the rooftop, i.e. David, right? Hey, you know what? God gave me all these rules and all this special mission and what I'm supposed to do, but that honey looked good. I like the prostitutes from Philistine, i.e. Samson, and I'm going to lose my vision and my sight over it. Right?
Right.
We are just naturally disobedient as men. And I have to be aware of that. So now...
And not to say that women don't, I don't think fully understand sometimes... being the influence, being how you can influence really is powerful, and how you use it.
Yes. The influence in being powerful and how you use it, right? Proverbs 31 is a mother telling her son how marriage should look, what a wife should look like, what a husband should be doing, a son. And listen how this thing goes. When you see the husband sitting in the gate with the elders, you have to understand the time. If his house was out of order, he was not authorized to sit in the gate. Go fix your house before you get up here. Hey, dear pastor, if your house is tore up, get out the pulpit until your house is back in order. Dear prophet, stop prophesying while your house tore up. Okay, dear apostle, sit down your mantle until your house is back in order. Dear evangelist, go sit down all the messages and rest your little feet until your house is in order. Dear teacher, put down that next lesson until your house is in order.
Yeah, word.
Now, his house had to be in order. It speaks to partnership, because if his wife wasn't doing her part, the house would not be in order. So that means he didn't have time to go sit in the gate. Nor did he have the authority to sit in the gate because his house was out of order. Right? And his wife understood, if the house ain't in order, he can't be in the gate. And if he ain't in the gate, he can't send people down here to buy my tapestries.
Right. I can't make no money.
We can't make no money. Listen, the Proverbs 31 woman, we made it all about the woman, but Proverbs 31 is about marriage. And so here this woman is sitting here saying, I need to play my role. I told you going to talk dirty words. And the husband saying, I need to play my role so that we can fulfill. The Proverbs 31 woman was an entrepreneur. And so y'all boss chick, whatever you want to call it. So when y'all sitting here saying we want biblical traditional women, I want to get back to what a traditional woman was. She was an entrepreneur. She produced. That's what a traditional woman was. We keep talking about this traditional woman, and we think the traditional woman was this lily-back woman who didn't have any authority. She didn't have any distress. She was this this damsel in distress. We thought that that's what the traditional woman is. No, the traditional woman, doggone, was an entrepreneur. She was a mother. She was a wife. She gave wise counsel to the other women in the city. She was kind to the poor, so she had philanthropic work that she did. A traditional woman was not just at home with her legs up waiting for the next baby. God dog it.
Time.
I'm sorry, y'all better let me out of here. I better go. Because when I get to talking about this, I get to a different level.
Oh, because now you messing with people's being fruitful and multiplying. Let's go eat this. I got some bananas for you. Let's go.
You got some bananas? What bananas got to do with it?
The fruit.
The fruit? Oh, Lord. That ain't the apple. Thank the Lord. So my wife done said that we done had enough. She finna pull me out of here before I say some more controversial stuff. Because it is, when we talk about a traditional woman, people need to stop immediately running to barefoot and pregnant. She was an entrepreneur. She was a producer of seeds. She was a philanthropist. She was an educator. And because her and her husband cooperated, they created paradise.
Because they wasn't in
the garden.
Competition with each other.
They wasn't in competition. And that's exactly what the world wants to happen. So I'm gonna stop. Yeah, we're gonna have to, hey, listen, if y'all want another episode, you're gonna have to let us know.
Because I need to make as much as you or more.
You need to make as much as me as more and whatever. And I'm gonna tell you, in these divorce court streets, some women find out some real hard facts. I done seen some videos and I have cracked my side at it. I mean, just cracked my side. It probably wasn't right for me to laugh.
No,
but I have cracked my side at it, because they go in there and then she got to pay him alimony.
I'm gonna pray for you.
No, I mean, I got to pay him out. What? How I got to pay him alimony and doing all that? Because I'm sorry, you got to pay him alimony because you make the most money and all these things, and so he has a lifestyle that you provided. This, and that. So now it's on him. What's happening? It's a different story. No, but I'm a woman.
Yep. So he should turn it down, right?
No, he shouldn't. Take that money. Take that money. Take that money.
Good night to the people.
Take that money. Take that money. Yeah. Hey, we thank you for joining us on Vile Sex and Housekeeping.
Yes.
I know I kind of got on a little bit of a rant, and y'all, I'll go back and edit the video and take out all the controversial things. So I'm not going to do that. So until the next video, we thank you for joining us. We won't be so long before we see you next time. But until then, in the meantime, between time, we love you for real. God bless.
Good night.
Good night.